Francisco on Odyssey Sports Station. Always live on the free Odyssey app, Twitch, and YouTube. Powered by First NorCal Credit Union. It's time for the Kickoff Show.
Good! What a win for the 49ers!
It's Sunday, and we're locked in on the red and gold.
What a run by George Kittle!
All right, what is going on, faithful? Week 4 is here. This is the Kickoff Show live from the Hilton Santa Clara, presented by Habas Law. Evan Giddings alongside Jason Dumas with you live just outside of Levi Stadium, getting set for the 49ers and the Patriots. So 1-2 matchup. Maybe not something that anyone had predicted on the 49ers side come week 4, right, Jason. But overall, as we kind of get this thing rolling, I'm glad to welcome you in, filling in for Lorenzo Neal this week. And just overall, kind of the feeling right now about the 49ers, because we were talking about it right before. I don't know if you can necessarily call it a get-right game, because that was supposed to be last week, but is it a must-win? Is it a gotta-win? It's somewhere in between all those things.
Well, you said it before we went on air. You put it perfectly. It's a better win type game. Now, obviously, we're in September. You don't want to put so much stock in one game in September and call it a must-win, because as we've seen, even last year, the Niners lost 3 or 4 in a row. Then they ripped off 7 straight. This team is capable of doing that. So if they lose this game, will the sky be falling in the fan base on social media? Yeah, of course. But obviously social media is not based off reality. In reality, they'd be able to get it together even if they lose today. But like you said, they better win this game. On paper, they're the superior team by far, really. The Patriots are actually playing a little better than I thought they would be playing heading into the season. I really like Gerard Mayo as a head coach. He seems like a fine leader. Jacoby Brissett, he's one of those quarterbacks. He leaves a lot to be desired, but he's not one of those guys who's just going to lose you a game. He's going to kind of just do what he needs to do, and if his skill players, his run game, and his defense helps him out, they'll kind of stay in games, but not overly talented. So this is a game the 49ers should really win. They're getting some of their horses back. Obviously, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, 2 guys who will really help out. Brock Purdy, who quite frankly hasn't even looked like he needs all that much help. He has been one of the lone bright spots of this season. The 49ers look like they have their quarterback of the future. Most people already knew that, but, he hasn't been paid yet, so the jury is still out. And he looks like a guy, especially when you look at some of the other quarterbacks around the league, some of his peers who have gotten massive paydays. You look at Brock Purdy and you say, why the hell not? He is just as good or better than a lot of those guys. I just think of, for instance, Trevor Lawrence. That guy got a massive payday. There's no way you can justify him getting that payday and then start penny pinching when it comes to Brock Purdy. That's what I would say if I was his agent, and I'm sure his agent's probably going to be saying the same thing. So Brock Purdy, he has his horses back. Not everyone. Obviously, we can get into the Christian McCaffrey situation a little later in the show, but we got a relatively good report on him today from Ian Rappaport, I believe. But this is one of those, I think you said it last week, was a get-right game. I think this will be the get-right game to get the mojo back, get the fans feeling confident again, and end September on a positive note at 500 going into October and get some steam back.
Well, speaking of Brock Purdy, this is the first time he's been under 500 as a quarterback. This is foreign territory to him. But to your point, he's probably been the most stable part about this season so far for the 49ers. So getting George Kittle back is going to be important, though they might not be on 100% pitch count. Also, Deebo Samuel is coming back from that calf strain. So George Kittle with the hamstring, Deebo Samuel with the calf strain are going to be active for this game and are going to be out there against a Patriots team that has got some flaws defensively. Now, that might be the culture sort of, tone-setting aspect of their group, but this is a team that very much like the Rams last week for different reasons. Last week, it was the Rams being a team that was banged up, and they're missing a couple of their wide receivers. They're missing a lot of their offensive line. They're a team that can be taken advantage of and could have been put away by the 49ers, but once they went up 14-0, went up 21-7, could not put the Rams away. This is a similar situation for not personnel reasons, but just for talent reasons, that the Patriots are a team that the Niners, I believe, Jason, can put away and frankly should put away. And so kind of reflecting back on last week and maybe the last couple of weeks, we know the Vikings now appear to be a more legitimate team than a lot of people gave them credit for. The Rams were a team that I think the Niners more collapsed against and lost that game as opposed to getting beaten. So where do you come off after watching the last 2 weeks of 49ers football? How do you feel like this team is feeling right now?
It's one of those games where it stings, it sucks. The media, people like us, the fans are going to be talking about it and letting you hear it all week long, but you kind of just flush it. It happens every now and then in the NFL. It happened at an inopportune time for the 49ers because it dropped them to 1-2, which is kind of an eyesore just from a standings point of view. You'd rather be 2-1 in that spot.
Of course.
But it happens. They should have won that game. It's happened to a couple teams already in the NFL this year. The Eagles, 99% chance win against the Falcons. They drop a fluky ball. Falcons go down and score, and then all of a sudden you're wondering what happened. It's happened to a couple teams this year. You can argue it happened to the Saints last week against the Eagles. Saints had that game pretty much in the bag, and they let a broken play goes 65 yards, and all of a sudden they lose. It's kind of the same thing for the Niners in L.A. They had that game won, but it is just another reminder in the NFL, you got to play all 60 minutes. And when you don't, things like that can happen. I don't think that game was a huge indicator as to who the 49ers are. I don't think we learned much from that game. It was a team that was very banged up. Granted, the Rams were also banged up too, so I guess they get that excuse as well. But it was two banged up teams, and the Rams were able to pull a rabbit out of a hat. Credit to them. You have to give them some credit for that. But you also have to just kind of look at the Niners and take it for what it was. You outplayed a team. You got sloppy at the end. You didn't tighten up, and they were able to steal one. Good teams, professional teams. I don't even want to say good teams. Professional teams will steal games if you leave it dangling there for them. Like, these guys are really talented players. It doesn't matter who they play for or what their record is. If you give a team a chance, every now and then that chance is going to be taken by your opposition. And that's all it was, in my opinion, last week. I think the Niners, they sit at 1-2 right now. We're in the midst of week 4. I've been watching other quote-unquote contenders play today. I've been box score watching so far, and there is not one team in the NFC that is overwhelmingly better than the other. There's just not. I think as the season goes on, these teams will all start to recalibrate. You might see a team like the Minnesota Vikings kind of separate themselves, but while you have to respect what they're doing, if they play a 49ers team that both healthy late in the season, I would bet on the 49ers. I think most people would. If they said they wouldn't, they're probably lying. The 49ers are one of those teams, because of their history, because of their talent level, because of what their key players have gone through. I don't believe they need a home field advantage. I don't think they need the 1 or 2 seed in the NFC. They just need to get in the tournament. They have proven that they can win road playoff games. They have proven that they can win from coming from behind. They are just the most talented team in the NFC. As long as they get into the playoffs and they're relatively healthy, they will be fine, which is why I think these injuries so early might be a blessing in disguise. Give these guys a chance to get healthy. Don't rush people back. It is September still, for crying out loud.
That's Jason Dumas, Evan Giddings with you live at the Hilton Santa Clara, just outside of Levi's Stadium. If you're rolling by for the tailgate, come by, say what's up. It's a fantastic atmosphere. Our producer here, Tim Jordan, might just buy you a pop. I'm going to put that out there for him, even though he didn't volunteer himself. That is all me. We are brought to you by Habas Law.
They don't want any pops. They want something with a little alcohol in it.
Well, that is slang for what we're talking about, right? A silver bullet, something like that. Anything that's cool and cold, basically, at this point. But look, we're going to be taking you up until kickoff right here on 95.7 The Game, as we do every single weekend. Week 4, 49ers, Patriots, and I'm glad you mentioned the health aspect of things, because I think that's the reason why it's funny. The word contender, I don't know if it's been used for the 49ers the first 3 weeks, maybe after week 1, they look pretty dominant against the Jets. But the word contender, quite frankly, hasn't been used a whole lot in the NFC.
Yeah.
I mean, the Vikings right now are 3-0. The Seahawks are 3-0. And really, I think that the two teams as it stands, not looking at the results right now during the games, but the two teams that I guess have the record to be put in the contending category based on preseason expectations would be the Eagles and the Lions, because they're 2-1 and they've taken care of some business. But if you asked me to say who's looked the best in the NFC, it wouldn't be the team that I would have expected to be at the beginning of the season. And the 49ers, I certainly don't think have reached their peak. But the question is, can they get healthy? Because I think, same along the lines of you, Jason, if they have a potential postseason path that takes them outside of Levi's Stadium, if they're whole, if they're healthy, if they're 100%, that is a team that can absolutely get it done.
That's all that matters.
And so that's why Debo coming back today, Kittle coming back today is good, but also I wouldn't necessarily expect those two players to be playing their normal pitch count, because it's about the long game. It's about the marathon. Mm-hmm. It's not about the sprint right now in a way that a lot of people felt during Week 4 last season when they were rolling.
Yeah, 100%. I'll put it this way. I think teams like New Orleans, teams like Minnesota, maybe even a Green Bay who doesn't look good today. They're getting killed by Minneapolis. But let's just keep it with Minnesota and New Orleans, two of the teams who have looked pretty good this year. Even though New Orleans lost last week, they lost to a pretty good team, tight game. Mm-hmm. I think those are the two teams who are, quote-unquote, contender-esque right now at this point in the season, who would benefit the most from home field. Like U.S. Bank Stadium, the Superdome.
Yeah, that place is loud.
They need those home fields. Then when you think of the 49ers, the Eagles, you can throw the Lions in there too. Those are the teams where I was like, all right, because they're on paper probably more talented than those other teams and more battle-tested for that matter, they can probably go on the road. It doesn't matter as much to those teams. Now, ideally, any team wants home field advantage during the playoffs. That goes without saying. But I think teams like New Orleans and Minneapolis, they benefit a little more, especially with the 49ers, because half this roster has played in Super Bowls. A quarter of the roster has played in multiple Super Bowls. They've won road playoff games. They've had high pressure-packed moments for the last 4 seasons. These guys know what it takes. Now, obviously, you want it to be pretty. You want the team to have a nice record. You want things to be sunflowers and roses, but that's just not how it happens in the NFL. Unfortunately, the 49ers have had a stretch of just bad luck injury-wise. Christian McCaffrey still very much in the air. That injury scares me a lot. Even the wording today, like, hopefully he'll start running on hard ground soon. Like, that sounds like a guy who is nowhere near.
As opposed to clouds or what?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Hard ground. What else? That was such a weird, like, it was such a weird report.
Yeah.
What else are you running on? Sand?
Has that foot not touched the ground since he got hurt or went down?
It didn't make sense. And as someone who ruptured their Achilles in May, I understand how tricky the Achilles tendon is, because it's the strongest tendon in your body, what I learned after the fact. And it's a connector tendon. It connects so many things. It basically is what helps your lower body function. And as a agile running back, for you to have an Achilles issue, and they haven't been straight with us from the beginning.
Nope.
That also makes it worse because it causes us to speculate. It's a little concerning. Do I think the 49ers can win without Christian McCaffrey? I do. I think they're talented enough to do so, but make no mistakes. I think he is their most talented player. Maybe hold Trent Williams, but we're talking skill position players. And it would be a brutal loss, but he's a guy like, don't bring that man back until he is 100%, because you bring him back too early, and then all of a sudden we're coming to early December, and now he had a setback because you played him in early November. That's when you get into, okay, so he's missing the stretch run of the season and potential playoff games. So I think they know what they're doing. They're probably not going to risk the longevity of Christian McCaffrey to win some midseason games. But they need to be careful with that, and it's a little concerning. As for Debo, he'll be back. As for Kittle, he'll get healthy. You would expect Brandon Aiyuk to kind of snap out of it. I think he's putting a little too much pressure on himself. I think He's a guy who is very much plugged in to social media, whether he would publicly acknowledge that or not. So someone who has that temperament, who reads everything, and who is kind of impressionable, I can see how that could be having a negative effect on him right now, although he would never say that publicly. I think he's kind of feeling the pressure, feeling the noise, and, but I think he'll eventually snap out of it. He's too talented not to. And like I said, if the Niners were in this spot because I thought they were just downright playing terribly, I'd have a little bit of a pause, but I think it's just kind of it was such a weird offseason. They got two of their most important players back, Aiyuk and Trent, like game week basically of week 1. The McCaffrey speculation, I think it's just been a weird offseason. So I almost am treating these first 4 games, almost feels like it is their preseason. And they're just trying to get right. And it's a long season, and if they get their footing by mid-season, no one is even going to remember what happened week 3 in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, look, there are some things that I do find interesting, and it's more just kind of receipt-taking at this point. Yeah. So if the season goes in a poor direction, all right, well, we can look back and say, well, this is ABC that led to it. If the season goes in the way that we believe it can be, which is upwards and onwards, then some of those things, maybe they show up come postseason time, but they're not really that important. And I think that's the way the Niners have to approach it at this point. But I do want to stick with the McCaffrey news because Ian Rappaport of NFL Network reported earlier today that as early as November, that's kind of the timeline that they're looking at for Christian McCaffrey as far as him coming back at least by early November. That's per Ian Rappaport. And for fans wondering, what that is, when that is, that would be roughly week 10. That would be after the bye week. To me, that has always been the target date and the one that I've been looking at since I heard that he was going to Germany. Because from what I heard, Jason, look, there are obviously procedures that cannot be done in the U.S. Christian McCaffrey went over, by the way, on his own dime, from what I heard as well.
Had to be.
He went and sought this out. Exactly. He sought this out individually, and I think probably also had some input from the 49ers, but indirectly saying, hey, this is an option for you. These are things that you can go outside the country and look at. Famously, Kobe Bryant got a procedure with his knee, was not the Achilles, but Christian McCaffrey is going to be, I think he's already had the procedure, quite frankly. That's not anything that's out there. It's not reported. That's just something that I believe, because if the report from Rappaport...
He didn't go out there for a vacation.
Exactly. He didn't go out there for Oktoberfest. It's a little too early for that. But if the report is true that he's targeting early November as that return date, and again, that would be after the bye, week 10, at Tampa Bay, November 10th, that to me does also align with what I've kind of been feeling that the procedure allows. So this platelet enrichment process and this blood spinning that they have to do and can do in Germany typically is around a 4 to 6 week return date. So that would be about the bye week in week 10. But it also doesn't mean that Christian McCaffrey is going to be 100% at that point. And we just discussed the importance of health, the importance of being at your best at the right time for when it matters. So I would just caution fans that believe that Christian McCaffrey is going to come back and just hit the ground running. I do think it's going to be on a pitch count. I do think they're going to work him back slowly, and they're going to try and make sure that, to your point, with that fragile tendon that is the Achilles, that they don't do anything that could jeopardize the rest of his season, and specifically the postseason, because that's where they need McCaffrey the most. They need him come playoff time, and the Niners know that.
100%. And I'll even go a step further, anything to risk the longevity of his career.
Good point.
Because that is one of those injuries. It's a fatal injury for most athletes in general, but a running back, an NFL running back, to have Achilles injuries, like that is not good. And look, I'm not at every 49ers press conference. I'm not at practice every day. It's just I can't do that given the nature of my job and how far this facility is from the city. I would love to be there every day. I would if I could.
The Santa Clara 49ers.
Yeah, exactly. I can't. So I might have missed this question. I would like to hope somebody, if one of my colleagues have asked this, but I'd be interested to hear, were you guys aware of how bad this injury was or the nature of this injury? Because by no means, don't make mistake, everyone was surprised when he wasn't active week 1. I was on the field when everybody got that ESPN alert. Christian McCaffrey is inactive today. All of my colleagues were surprised. Now we're getting to a point where it's going to be November from his first game. So my question to John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan is, are you guys surprised by the nature of this injury and how long it has taken him to get on the field to play NFL games? Or were you guys just not being totally forthcoming? I would love to hear just that response, because this is crazy. It went from, oh, yeah, he'll be ready week 1. There's no way he's not missing it. Christian's words, and even Kyle Shanahan, he might not have said that verbatim, but he alluded to it, like he'll be ready. Now we're going to be going into November without Christian McCaffrey. Just how did we even get to this point for it to just shock us like this?
Well, that's the thing is, when you hear calf strain, you hear something, and there's varying grades of it, but you think about, okay, Deebo Samuel has a calf strain. Well, that kept him out the next week, but then he may or may not play. He will play today, but there was a chance that he wouldn't. Then you push it to next week, and maybe he misses a couple games. That is what I think a lot of people expected when they heard calf strain in training camp. And while that's not a good injury to have, and it's somewhat of a nagging injury, it's certainly not an Achilles injury, and it's certainly not Achilles tendonitis. So what I believe is that they knew that there was the tendonitis, but they didn't know how much that would actually impact his ability to play. Because I also heard that they were approaching week 1 as if he was going to start. He was practicing on that Thursday. He gave it a go on Friday. He was limited, but that's not anything that's going to raise any eyebrows in my mind. That's not a red flag. If you're not practicing Friday, like Talanoa Hufanga, who I don't think is going to play today against the Patriots, we'll have official inactives coming out in just a bit. That is something that makes sense. But McCaffrey was limited, and then he was all of a sudden scratched. It was like a half hour before kickoff.
I remember.
Jordan Mason's in. And now we've gotten to the point where
Mason even got himself into a little bit of trouble.
Oh, yes, he did. Which is also why there's, I think, just a little bit of pause on my end and wondering what the 49ers know, what they're putting out there, and what we're going to expect at this point. Because we went from expecting him to be there week 1 to now not expecting him to be there through the first 9 weeks of the season. And that is a chasm of information, in my opinion, Jason, that right now is not being available publicly, or the Niners are just choosing to keep under lock and key.
Yeah, 100%. And I get there's a bit of gamesmanship to it. I understand. But and this will be my last kind of rant on the 49ers and their forthcomingness. I don't even know if that's a word, about this injury. I get the gamesmanship or kind of keeping things close to the vest, and I get why that would benefit the organization and why they would want to do it. I get it. But there's a big difference between gamesmanship and then saying this guy just has calf tendonitis or a calf strain, to all of a sudden we're looking at mid-season. And then there's just the angle of, like, we were told it was a calf. Then it started changing into an Achilles. So it was at one point I was like, well, what is it? Is it his calf or is it his Achilles? And they haven't been too transparent. That's probably because they think it benefits them. They probably don't want the fan base to panic. They probably, I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but there's just a lot of unknowns to this injury, how it's been reported by the team, and it's just really confusing.
Yeah.
And but honestly, first and foremost, I just hope Christian is okay. I hope that calf and Achilles is okay, because that's a brutal injury for someone of his skill set.
Yeah.
And something tells me that he was practicing, and there were certain things that he couldn't do that he probably usually does second nature without even thinking. And he probably was like, you know what? Like, this does not feel right. The team probably said it doesn't look right, and we can't risk you hurting it any further. Our linebacker is sitting out because his Achilles blew up in February, and he might – who knows when he'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what, you don't want to have a Dre Greenlaw situation at any point this season. And, it's it's just selfishly, I want to see him on the field. He's an incredible player, and of course, he's a massive part of this 49ers team. As we move forward here on the Kickoff Show, presented by Habas Law, live from the Hilton Santa Clara, Evan Giddings alongside Jason Dumas with you on 95.7 The Game, taking you up until kickoff between the Niners and the Patriots. Now, I do want to look a little bit more broadly at some of the things that we saw the first few weeks, some of the things that we believe are correctable for this game, some of the things that might be a little systemic for the 49ers and might be impacting how we view them moving forward, because I think the one thing that our eyes are always drawn to, right, is the offense and the quarterback. And I've been extremely encouraged by what I've seen from Brock Purdy. But ironically, the side of the football that has been less banged up, that is actually has the ability to get more healthy, the defensive side of the football has been a little bit concerning. I also think some things about their special teams coverage, their special teams units has been concerning. And for a 49ers team and franchise, frankly, that I've always felt like is a pretty buttoned up, disciplined franchise, they haven't necessarily looked like that. So I do want to move forward and try and talk about some of those things that we believe they can correct. Again, today, they are a 10-point favorite. Like, they are expected to beat and maul the New England Patriots. And I don't know whether it's a kiss of death, because the first 3 weeks, the three largest favorites have all lost outright. I think that streak comes to an end today, but we'll continue to talk about why as we move forward here on the Kickoff Show. Again, brought to you by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. We'll be back live from the Hilton Hotel after this in Santa Clara, outside of Levi's Stadium, for the Niners and the Patriots. Kickoff at 1 o'clock. Evan Giddings, Jason Dumas on 95.7 The Game. We're back after this.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
All right, welcome back. Live at the Hilton Santa Clara before Week 4. The Niners getting set to take on the New England Patriots. 2 1-2 squads. Evan Giddings with Jason Dumas in for Lorenzo Neal with you. All brought to you by Habas Law. Look, we're having some fun right outside this tailgate, Jason. I don't know. I'm always interested to see what kind of jerseys people are rocking, right? Because I find the Niners outside of the Youngs and the Montanas, there's a lot of those kind of skill position players, a lot of defensive players. But then also for the Patriots, if you're not rocking a number 12, and honestly I haven't seen a lot of those Bradys out here, it feels like we're seeing a few throwbacks, a couple Gronks. I saw an Edelman, saw Troy Brown. I mean, people are rolling out in droves right now, and I'm trying to spot the most unique one out here.
Well, there's this guy right in front of us. Who is this number 10? Who was the former number 10 on the Patriots? Was that Garoppolo?
Well, Jimmy Garoppolo was,
he was 10
number 10.
For the Niners.
I think they might have had a defensive back, Jones. Is it Jack Jones? I'm not sure.
Well, this guy has the number 10 Patriots jersey, but he has the name plate taped off. It has May on it for Drake May. Drake, obviously, Drake is their backup quarterback who they drafted this past year out of UNC. I'm surprised he's not playing, but I get the logic. I actually feel Gerard Mayo. There's no rush. There's no rush. The Patriots aren't doing anything. Even if May comes in and plays really well this year as a rookie, there's no harm in letting a kid sit and just saturate information behind a very professional guy in Jacoby Brissett, who is probably a great vet to have, who probably is someone he can lean on. But, yeah, obviously this Patriots fan base, May gives them something to look forward to. I'm not sure he's going to be any good, but obviously a fan can hope. And, there's not many Patriots fans out here. It's not like the weeks when you see the Cowboys in town, when you see, there's some other franchises, obviously, that just travel a little better. Obviously, New England hasn't been good for a while, so there's not as much excitement within that fan base. But you'll see the Patriots fans scattered around. And I think you said something earlier off camera, off air, that it was a little stagnant pulling up this morning.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you feel the electricity a little more on other weeks. And, week 4, 1-2, that 1 p.m. start against the Patriots, a team that's not the sexiest team, don't have many big-name players. I can see why it was a little stagnant, but it's starting to pick up. The Niners fans are waiting for the team to give them a reason to really, dive in, if that makes sense. Obviously, they're already invested, but the first 3 weeks has kind of, like I said, it feels like it's been the preseason. It really has. I know these games count. Don't jump down my throat. I know they count. I know you want to win them. I know you want to set yourself into standings to be in a good position heading into the stretch. But it feels like the Niners are still getting their footing. And fortunately enough for them, I think they have the talent to do so. They have the talent, whereas other NFL teams, it's like every week we can't lose it. We gotta put our best foot forward because there are teams that are way more talented than us that can creep up on us later in the season. So I think the Niners are still finding their footing, and that has trickled down to the fan base. Fan base is still just kind of waiting to explode.
Well, no, a lot of good stuff there. I want to use the May conversation and really the rookie quarterback conversation to get into, number one, the quarterback that plays for the 49ers, but also I think the reason why this is a perfect opponent at a perfect time is because you talked about Mayo not necessarily needing to go all in on Drake May, the way that perhaps Matt Eberflus needs to go all in for Caleb Williams. Eberflus is, if this season doesn't go his way, he might be on the way out.
Yeah, he'll be fired.
There are head coaches around the league that are having to rely immediately on their quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks are expected to step up. And the one right now who looks fantastic is Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, he looks phenomenal.
Caleb Williams is the one that does not, and then Bo Nix with Sean Payton, maybe a little less expectations behind him. But Drake May is someone that is expected to one day be good. But this season is not for the New England Patriots expected to be good. It's not expected to go anywhere. If they make noise, it will be completely out of left field. And so that's why this kind of game, I don't think, look, there are things about this Patriots team that we can get into that I do like. They have some strengths, and I think that they are generally a disciplined enough group and buttoned up to at least test the Niners on that front and make this a physical ground and pound kind of rock fight. That's the way they want to turn this game. But if you're the Niners, you're facing a team today that's not playing with urgency. While last week the Rams were banged up and belittled a bit by injury, that's a team that has expectations to challenge for a postseason position and, honestly, the NFC West the way that they did last year. This is a Patriots team that you're catching in Week 4 that, number one, is still kind of in preseason mode, and number two, has no emphasis on any of the games this season because they could go out and get a number one pick overall. They'll be in the same spot they were last year if they're the worst team in football. If they're somewhere in the middle, they're playing with house money. The Niners, meanwhile, are a team that needs to feel that urgency, that needs to grab that urgency because while it is still early in the season, it can get late early in seasons. And so I think they're playing them at a perfect time. And as far as approaching an opponent without urgency, that's what the Niners have to play with. That's what I'm looking for them to play with today, Jason. Playing with urgency, something that they did not have for the full 60 minutes last week.
Yeah, they need that urgency. I mean, obviously in the short term, because you want to set yourself up for a playoff run and a potential Super Bowl run. That is the goal here. There is no need to skate around it or pretend that's not the goal. Anything less than a Super Bowl will be a disappointment. Yep. I know that's an extremely high bar for a team, but it is what it is. It's just the truth. When you've been to 2 Super Bowls in the last, 4 years, and you got this type of payroll, you have this type of talent, honestly, when you look at the Niners offense, it's essentially a Pro Bowl team. Yeah, with Aiyuk, Debo, Kittle, McCaffrey, Purdy, Juszczyk, my man on the line, Trent Williams.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that was the reason that I felt what Debo was saying when he said that we're the best team. We've been the best team for the past few years. It's like, on paper, yes, they literally have had the most Pro Bowlers and the most All-Pros the last 3 seasons combined. So from that perspective, they have been the best team. They just haven't won the biggest game, and that's why, to your point, the expectation is to get to that game.
Yeah, it wasn't the message with Debo. It was just a messenger. It was just a messenger, and sometimes that's all it is. It was a little tone deaf, and quite frankly, I think when I say people, I think 49ers fans are tired of hearing we have the best team. Who cares if you have nothing to show for it? It doesn't really matter. It's actually a bad thing that you guys have had the best team for the last however many years you said, and there's nothing to show for it. Who really cares? So that is, that's probably not anything that Niners Nation is going to love hearing Debo say, although deep down, he's probably right.
Well, that's one of those disconnects. It's like, as a player, I would expect you to have that mindset and that opinion if you believe it to be true, and you're playing with as competitive of a side of things as you can. But also, as a fan, I understand it's like, well, that doesn't mean bleep to me, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't mean bleep that we've been the best team because we have 0 Super Bowls and we've been to the big game twice. We've been at 4 NFC Championship games.
Yeah, 100%. So, going back to the urgency, the Niners also have this urgency really because money is going to get really funny for them soon. In fact, money was funny this offseason. It took them a while just to pay Trent and to pay Brandon Aiyuk. Clearly, they were penny pinching on those 2 guys. They had a bunch of guys restructure so they could even get to the point where they could find money for Trent and Brandon. So money is going to get even funnier next offseason. We all know it. We see it coming. They're facing the barrel. Brock Purdy is due for a payday. It's a quarterback's league. They're going to pay him. They have no other choice but to pay him. And with that, there will probably come some sacrifices. I would not be surprised if one of these 3 people aren't on the roster next year. Kittle, Debo, or Brandon Aiyuk. It's just there's going to be a sacrifice at some point. That's just how it is in the NFL. When someone gets paid, when people continue to get paid, they restructured McCaffrey, which was, obviously a smart decision. He was, in my opinion, he was the MVP last year, but because it's a quarterback's award, they gave him Offensive Player of the Year. But truly, in my opinion, he was the best offensive player in football last year. So yeah, it's money's going to get funny next year, and there's going to be some sacrifices. I think the locker room understands that too, and quite frankly, I like their attitude coming into this year. Like George Kittle, he had some great quotes preseason, even after week 1, just saying things along the lines of like, we're just taking it 1 week out of a time and this. I remember the 1 year after they lost, the year after they lost to the Chiefs the first time, they came in on this whole thing. It was a revenge tour. Mm-hmm. And they were very, very open about it, being a revenge tour and getting back. And they didn't get back. They lost to the Rams, blew a 10-point lead to the Rams. The Rams go on to win the Super Bowl. And then even last year, it was after the Eagles loss. They weren't saying revenge tour, but it was kind of a similar theme.
They probably felt like they got robbed in that game. They were robbed of the opportunity to prove that they could win it.
Right. So there was a lot of chatter and going into the season, and they put these expectations on themselves, and they fell on their face again. They lost a very winnable game. This year, I don't feel that, like, the weight of it. Like, last year, they put a lot of weight on their shoulders.
For sure.
The year after the first Super Bowl loss, they put a lot of weight on their shoulders. I do not feel it this year. I actually feel like it's the most healthiest mindset that they've had with this group. It's just like, take it week by week by week. All we got to do is get healthy and get there. They're not putting this tremendous, at least from my perspective. Who knows what's going on and who knows how other people are interpreting it, but I'm interpreting it like, look, they're taking it week by week. They understand what has happened in the past and how that might affect them going forward. They understand that this might be their last year with this particular foundation of a team. And they understand that it's a marathon. They have been humbled so many times. When you get humbled that many times and you get smacked in the face that many times, you become a little jaded. And I think this Niners team, in terms of mentality, I think this is the best mentality that they've had with the course of this core lineup. Now, I know fans might not love to hear that because they're sitting at 1-2, so you might be asking, well, how is this the best mindset? They're 1-2 going into week 4. People are injured. Aiyuk looks terrible. It's a long season, and I think they understand that, whereas in years past, I think they were just putting a lot of pressure on themselves. And a lot of it was self-inflicted. A lot of it was like Debo and Brandon Aiyuk, like just chirping for no reason, really, for no reason, putting out bulletin board material for no reason. I know fans like to say that's nothing and that's just they're confident, they're athletes. Nah, these guys are all hyper competitive. So are their opponents. There's no need to give people extra motivation when it's unnecessary. Now, if you're responding to trash talk and that kind of thing is one thing. But if you're just telling people you're the best thing since sliced bread and you're doing all the extra stuff, other teams take notice, and that's why the Niners, even though they're an amazing team and they've had so many wins over the past couple of years, that's why they get piled up on social media. That's why fan bases laugh at the Niners' pain, probably more than any other team in the league, maybe besides the Eagles, or you would want to say the Chiefs, but the Chiefs always get the last laugh usually.
Yeah.
But the Niners, in the past, they have done a lot of talking. I think objectively, anybody who is objective can say that. But this year, I've kind of just seen more business like Hold That Debo podcast, which has he come out with one since then?
If he has, it hasn't been as public, or he hasn't said anything as incendiary as he did the first episode.
I think the cord got pulled after week 1. That was a bomb. Not only did he say a lot of dumb things, it was just boring.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it also just wasn't a very good podcast.
It was a snooze fest. Like, I don't who
they
advised?
took the one part of the podcast that made me want to listen to it. So I'm not going to lie, I took the bait.
Oh, I listened
hook, line,
too.
and sinker. And then as I'm listening to this thing, I'm thinking, Wow, well, this is not like the clip that they posted. I'm not really hearing much whatsoever.
It was boring, and you know a podcast is boring when you just naturally start looking at your phone, you start doing other things, because you just start to tune it out, and you would think someone would have been like, hey, Debo, do a podcast for sure. If that's what you want to do, let's make it good and do it right. You got to liven up a little bit. You have to have a bit of a personality. You can't just sit there, be too cool, give like 2-word answers, mumble. Like, if you're going to do a podcast, come on, man. Give us some energy. Give us some personality. It was like he was too cool. He was giving, like, the host 1-word responses and mumbling, like, almost like he was forced to be there. Like, it's a locker room interview, and I'm asking him annoying questions after the game.
Yeah.
It's like, this was your choice. Do you want to be here or not?
I think it's funny that Debo's the guy that it seemingly has the most, like media, not necessarily just podcast deals, but he goes on the Kay Adams show. Mm-hmm. He's always kind of given these big interview spots and podcasts. What's going on? We got our man Crawford here for the sales staff rolling through. Dropping in with, a libation. Not for us on air, but for sure. It's just a fantastic vibe down here, first and foremost, at the Hilton Santa Clara, right outside Levi's Stadium before Week 4 of the San Francisco 49ers and the New England Patriots. Get on down here. We're presented by Habas Law. Jason Dumas in for Lorenzo Neal with Evan Giddings. It's a fantastic time. I do want to use not necessarily the podcast itself, but to me, the only thing I would push back as far as the mindset about this team right now, Jason, is there appears to me to be mixed messages. And so whether it's Debo saying that this is the greatest team over the last couple of seasons, whether it's them not really having the same rah-rah attitude as they did at the beginning of last season, I'm not saying that they're not in a healthy place, but at the end of the day, the record is what dictates how we remember your season.
Yeah,
and so
true.
They're 1-2 right now. While you could say they're in a great mental space, I could also say they appear to be lackadaisical. They don't appear to be urgent. They appear to be a team that's more focused on outside projects than what's going on in the field. And that's why I think they can quiet some of that noise with the game here today. Not completely, because there's always going to be fans that come in and are going to want Monday morning quarterback as far as, well, you should have won that game. You still blew the game to the Rams. The Vikings still look like they're the best team in the NFC because they're rolling right now in Green Bay. There's going to be all these things that people throw around, but the Niners have a chance to calm and quiet some of, I think, the internal noise that right now it just feels to me like the vibe of this team is mixed messages, and I can't get that out of my head because I need them to figure out where this season is going to go, whether they're healthy, whether they're injured. They're getting a few of their boys back in Debo and Kittle today, but they need, to me, a better get-right game, a better win game here today against the Patriots. And so, while I think they're a little bit more calm and even keel, there is urgency on their season. There is expectations. And right now, I know they haven't necessarily flipped the switch yet, but I do think they can do a little bit in that area today. I want to see them flip that switch because this time last year, they were rolling. And it wasn't just because they were winning games. They looked locked in. It was McCaffrey. It was Aiyuk. Even though Bosa was coming off of his contract negotiation, he at the very least was still playing high-level football. There's been a lot of distractions that I feel like have leaked over from the offseason into the season, and I want to see that noise calmed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about how they were locked in. But like I said, look, they made the Super Bowl, and I know that's hard to do in itself.
Absolutely.
And I know the goal was to win the Super Bowl. But sometimes, sometimes you just, I don't know if I want to say you lose to a better team because I still personally don't even know if the Chiefs were better than them. But I will give them credit. They made it there. But they put a lot of pressure on themselves. They played so well so early. They were like a machine.
Yeah.
And I do think some of that pressure, they started to feel it. And I think they started to feel it around that Baltimore game last year because let's just be honest. Give them credit for winning the game. The same thing we said earlier. When you give pros a chance to win, they're going to take it sometimes. Just like we were talking about how the Rams did that to the Niners last week. The Lions and the Packers gave the Niners a chance last postseason because let's be honest, they probably shouldn't have won either of those games. They shouldn't have. They definitely shouldn't have won that Lions game. That was almost like Dan Campbell's like, here, those going for it on certain fourth downs. And then the same thing with the Packers. It was just like they probably won games where they were outplayed, just like they lost a game they outplayed the Rams last week. But I do think they kind of were a different team after that Ravens game. I don't know if it was some sort of scheme that they played their hands and defenses started playing them a little, but the offense, it was not clicking the way it clicked after they got their butt whips by the Ravens.
Yeah.
I do think that kind of came. They started feeling some of that pressure. And you're right, though. Last year was by week 6, there was no mistake. At that point, week 6, week 7, it was San Francisco and Philly and then everybody else. This year is so different. You got the Vikings right now, but you said, do you believe in it?
Apparently, Sam Darnold can't throw an interception, and he looks like the second coming of Joe Montana.
I would be shocked if February came around and we were talking about a Vikings Super Bowl. I just would be so shocked. I'd
still be shocked if they win a playoff game. I know that they're a good team, but this has been such an unexpected start to their season, and it looks like they're going to roll to 4-0. That I guess I need to see them continue to prove it. And I'm not saying that the Niners get the benefit of the doubt. They're 1-2. The Vikings, the Seahawks, they're undefeated.
They should get the benefit of the doubt.
They should get the benefit of the doubt. But I also think that each season is its own individually. And so far, the Niners have not proved that, whether it's because of a Super Bowl hangover or because of contract negotiations or because of injuries, they have not proved yet that they are the same group or even the same level, mentally, psychologically, that they were last season. And that's where I think they can start to chip away at that. Some of the doubters like me right now, they can chip away at my disbelief in what I've seen so far through 3 weeks by winning today.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right about every season is its own entity, but you still, at the end of the day, talent wins in this league, and you would imagine once teams get healthy, and it's not just the Niners, the injuries, people are dropping like flies in the NFL right now is actually very disappointing.
By the way, we also do have an update on some of the inactives. Talanoa Hufanga and Ronnie Bell are both inactive for the 49ers. Okay. Deebo Samuel, Trent Williams, and, of course, George Kittle all officially active against the Patriots today.
Yeah, you want to see the best players play. And, frankly, we haven't seen that in the NFL this year. The Niners, of course, the Rams, the Bears have some key injuries. The Eagles right now are playing without 3 all-pro players on offense. And I'm sure there's so many people that I'm forgetting, but it's annoying. But hopefully these superstar players who are out now will be playing later in the season so we can see teams at full strength actually go at it. But I do think the way the NFL season as a whole has played out this year in the short 4 weeks that we've had has benefited the 49ers because they're not in some huge hole, especially if they win today. They're 2-2. They're 2 games back of the Vikings. Come on. I guess 3 games back with the tiebreaker, but that's not some insurmountable hole that they've dug themselves in. Maybe it would be a little different if it was like the 4-0 Lions, and it's like a team that battle tested, or 4-0 Green Bay Packers or something. It's the 4-0 Vikings, I think, and the 4-0 Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are going to have a tough test tomorrow night against the Lions. I guess where is that game?
That game is in Detroit.
Okay,
so they're slight favorites. I mean, Seattle looks like a good squad, but that's also part of it too, Jay. And I know we got to hit a break here in just a sec. But my last thing is the Niners division looks like it could be the best division in the NFC, and that was not the case last year.
No.
So
the Cardinals are much improved. Clearly, the Seahawks are better, and the Rams beat the Niners, and the Rams, if all of a sudden Nakua gets back and Cup comes back, all of a sudden they have a fighter's chance.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're going to continue to talk about that fighter's chance, Jason Dumas, Evan Giddings here on the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you have been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. If you got a little bit of time, about an hour away until kickoff, 1:05 at Levi's Stadium, Week 4 getting underway. If you got some time, stop by the tailgate right outside the Hilton Santa Clara. It's a fantastic vibe. We got Niners jerseys, Patriots jerseys, everyone coming together, enjoying some beautiful libations. There's also some memorabilia that you can pick up on your way out. A jersey here or two. Grab a snack. There's a taco truck right outside, some barbecue. It smells like hell down here in the best kind of way. So just come out and enjoy the vibe before you get into the stadium and enjoy, hopefully, a 49ers win as they try and get right this week, moving back towards 500. They're both 1-2, the teams that are playing today. And coming up next, I do want to also focus on the quarterbacks. We talked a little bit about Brissett. We touched on Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy, in my opinion, has not got enough credit for what he has done so far this season, and it's only because the Niners are 1-2. But he has been one of the most consistent players at that position in the National Football League, and that was something that we had a lot of questions about last year. I find it funny that we think about last season. At the beginning of last season, it was all about Brock Purdy's elbow. It was a question of what kind of quarterback he was going to be. Could he be the guy that filled in midway through 2022 into 2023? And he's seemingly calmed all expectations in the negative direction, and now he's moving towards, what he is going to be paid this offseason, and he is becoming the Niners franchise quarterback. We'll dig into that more on the other side as we roll on. If there's anything you want to contribute to the conversation, feel free to chime in at 888-957-9570. We'll be back after this on the Kickoff Show, live from the Hilton Santa Clara, presented by Habas Law, with Jason Dumas and Evan Giddings on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
Keep it locked and loaded here all day on 95.7 The Game. The Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law, live right now at the Hilton Santa Clara, just outside Levi's Stadium before the Niners take on the Patriots in Week 4. 2-1-2 squad trying to get back to 500. Jason Dumas in for Lorenzo Neal today with Evan Giddings. But also, of course, after the game, after the final whistle, stay right here on 95.7 The Game and hit those lines because overtime is coming up with Mark Grandy along with Sterling Bennett and Kyle Madsen reacting to every single football game, all 17 weeks on 95.7 The Game. Fantastic post-game coverage, and I'm sure they're going to have some thoughts about the Niners win or, God forbid, a Niners loss. They are 10-point favorites. Look, I understand why some fans and even myself have been a bit worried about the kind of the start of the season. And to me, Jason, it's been primarily about two things. It's been about the defense, and it's been about special teams. The one thing that I find funny is how each of the last two Mondays, it feels like, a lot of the reaction has been about the offense. It's been about where has Aiyuk been. It's been about, is Brock Purdy made enough plays? To me, Brock Purdy has been the most stable part of this franchise, especially for a franchise that has arguably the most unstable of quarterbacks over the past 10 years. Everyone has been looking for their franchise signal caller here in San Francisco, and Brock Purdy's now giving it to them. I feel like the one thing that I have not been worried about this season has been number 13, and though he hasn't necessarily lit up the touchdown board the way that Sam Darnold has or the way that a few of these other quarterbacks around the league has, he's been the one guy that I feel like I know what I'm going to get each and every Sunday.
Nah, he's been really, really good. He's like a top 6, 7 quarterback, in my opinion, the way he's been playing the last year and a half. And the thing I always try to listen to people who are smarter than me, and the thing that has sold me on Brock Purdy, outside of just the eye test, is hearing the way other quarterbacks talk about him. Drew Brees just mentioned how you could just tell right away that Brock Purdy had it just with his command of the huddle and his command of the line of scrimmage, how he's checking plays, the respect he gets from his offense, and just the total command and maturity and calmness that it seems like he has on the line of scrimmage and breaking that huddle. Mm-hmm. That resonated with me. When a guy like Drew Brees says that and he gets that particular, Tom Brady on broadcasts has mentioned Brock Purdy and what he thinks of him. So when you have guys like Tom Brady and Drew Brees voluntarily vouching for you, like they weren't teed up for this. They weren't like, they just came out and said, no, we really like Brock Purdy. And then I've heard other quarterbacks just say, like, nah, he's legit. If you got guys with that type of clout saying he's legit, who the hell am I to say he's not? You know what I mean? Like, I get everyone can have their opinion, and that's true. But all opinions are not equal. They just aren't. And Drew Brees probably knows a little bit more about quarterbacks than I do. So I will lean on him. So I think Brock Purdy is a really good quarterback. And they're gonna back up the Brinks truck if they're smart. Because you won't want to risk losing the guy.
Yeah.
And everything will be they're going to pay him. Trust me, they are going to pay him. I have no indication that they won't. And he will be the quarterback in San Francisco for the next 5-6 years once he gets that payday. And
he should be. I mean, he's done nothing to deter you from having that belief.
Non-controversial personality, seems like a leader of men. He seems likable. I mean, to me, he is likable. Now, he doesn't seem likable. He's likable, doesn't say dumb things, great with the media. He's kind of underspoken, but that is like a kind of endearing. But like you said, he has such respect from his teammates. And, he really model franchise quarterback both on and off the field is what I'm trying to say.
And I think he's intelligent with when he displays his emotions. It's generally in between the lines. It's on the field. But the moment that he goes off or that the final whistle blows and the 60 minutes is done, he turns it off and he goes into pro mode, which is what you want from your quarterback. but is also what you want from your franchise players. This isn't just something that applies to QBs. It's something that I want from the captains on my team. It's something that I want from my head coach. It's something that I want from members of the front office. Those are qualities that I believe a leader should have, not just in football, but in life. And Brock Purdy has that right now, and at least to this point has not dissuaded me from believing that he can continue to be that guy. So, one thing that I was curious about this season, Jason, is, all right, would Brock Purdy be able to elevate his level of play? And while there was no way to foretell that Debo was going to be out, Christian McCaffrey was going to miss the first 3 weeks in the majority of the season. Kittle was going to be hit. Brandon Aiyuk wasn't going to hit the ground running. Trent Williams, even to some extent, might be a little bit banged up at times throughout the start of the season.
Not having his best start.
No,
it's a high
he's
bar.
He's still been really good.
It's a high bar, but
But he hasn't been maybe the best left tackle to ever play.
Right.
He's not at that level quite yet. And through all of that, Brock Purdy has not, in my opinion, really skipped much of a beat. The loss column is what it is, but as far as statistics, I've also seen him take a step as far as his mobility. He feels like he's able to extend plays and operate more out of system, and he's had to than ever before. Like, if I told you right now that the combined leaders in passing and rushing yards in the NFL among quarterbacks, Brock Purdy is second only behind, or probably third only behind, Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. And those are two quarterbacks that a lot of people believe or kind of label as more running oriented quarterbacks. Brock Purdy has never been seen as a running-oriented quarterback, and yet he is third in the league in that category. So he has been able to take a step as far as using his legs, in addition to being the same efficient and effective passer that he's been the first 1.5 seasons.
He's sneaky with it, and if you look back to the last postseason, it was either the Detroit game or the Green Bay game. He saved a couple drives with long runs, or evading a sack, stepping up, 3rd and 4, and running for 7 and moving the chains during times where moving the chains was like looking like a slugfest all day. So he's sneaky athletic. He has all of there's nothing that anybody's still questioning whether is Brock Purdy good enough. I think it's just looking for reasons not to. They probably just don't want him to be, because if you just use your eyes, he passes all the tests. I mean, in my opinion, especially the last 2 years, quarterback play overall, in my opinion, has been down. I think you have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. I think you have those 3 players who are clearly better than the field, and I think Mahomes is one, and then you can argue back and forth between Josh and Lamar.
I would put Burrow in there, but yeah.
Even Burrow, like, the record hasn't been able to stay healthy, and trust me, I'm a Burrow guy. I cheer for LSU football, so I was enamored with him when he was down there in Baton Rouge, just because I lived down there for a couple years.
Big Jaden Daniels guy?
Jaden Daniels, I'll admittingly say I
didn't see it coming. I didn't think he was this good.
Neither did I. I didn't see it coming, and I root for him to an extent. He is in the division of the team I grew up cheering for. But I didn't watch him as much. I was locked in on that LSU team, so I'm a Joe Burrow guy. I do think he gets written into that elite category a little more by default than he should. At the last 2 years, he's been injured, but when he has played, he hasn't even been extraordinary. I think he needs to have a prove-it year just to prove that he's with those other 3 who I mentioned. But my overarching point is, Ev, that quarterback play hasn't been great, in my opinion, the last 2 years. So, like, we don't need to judge Brock Purdy against Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. He's probably not as good as any of those guys, and that's not okay. Or that's okay. If he's in that next tier, and you think he might be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th best quarterback, that's a really elite quarterback.
Yeah.
Because there's only about 10 or 11 of them who are really worth a damn anyway, in my opinion. Once you get past like that 11, I think maybe like Jalen Hurts is like the floor. Once you get below that, it's a bunch of guys who are interchangeable. I don't think Brock Purdy is an interchangeable guy. If you have a guy who is not interchangeable, you have a good quarterback, and you should value it. Because if what is your bar if you think you can do better than Brock Purdy? If it's Lamar Jackson,
pretty high bar.
Yeah, if it's Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, great. You're never going to have your quarterback because those guys don't come around all that often.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like people are splitting hairs with Brock Purdy. Just take it for what it's worth. He wins. He's great on and off the field. He puts up good numbers. He's respected by his team. Like, what else do you want?
I mean, people want MVPs. They want Super Bowls. They want rings. And those are things that don't come around very often either. So, while I understand that there is something, you always want more from your quarterback, right? Like, unless you're a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs, you're always going to want more for your quarterback. Again, like we're having a conversation about Joe Burrow. You could split hairs on him if you want to, and I think he's a damn good quarterback. A lot of people believe that Josh Allen is turnover prone, that Lamar Jackson isn't the greatest passer when you need him to be. Like, there are all these things that you can nitpick about great quarterbacks, and I think we do that naturally, and especially with someone like Purdy. But the one thing about this season I think has been the most interesting part about him is for all of his consistency, the one guy he hasn't been on the same page with is supposed to be his number one receiver.
Yeah.
And that's Brandon Aiyuk, because everything else has been fantastic. Last week, the volume was there. 10-plus targets for Aiyuk. Probably could have had a couple more if not for penalties. But kind of a paltry day speaking, but it was Juwan Jennings that popped off and had a career day with 3 touchdowns and 11 catches.
He's good.
Brock Purdy appears to be more on the same page with his third wide receiver when everyone is healthy and wholesome than his number one or supposed to be number one receiver. And I'm just wondering if that's also something we see correct itself today as they get ready to play the Patriots, because the Patriots have a number one corner in Christian Gonzalez. They're a team that at least defensively competes and will get physical, but I think Brandon Aiyuk should be good enough to overcome that if he is the player we believe him to be, and if him and Brock Purdy are now past that preseason training camp phase of, well, you've had a few weeks now, you've had about a month since you've signed, you've had a month since you got your $120 million, now start putting it to work. Get on the same page with the quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. And quietly, that Juwan Jennings emergence kind of started during the postseason last year. He was good in both of those 2 postseason games that the Niners hosted, and then he was on his way to being the Super Bowl MVP quietly if the Niners won that game. So it's been kind of a revelation to see Juwan Jennings grow in this offense. I don't think Brandon Aiyuk did himself any favors in terms of getting himself in high regard with this coaching staff. In fact, week 1, it was Bonte I texted. I said it kind of seems like they're icing Aiyuk out of the offense. They were barely looking at him. Obviously, like you said, he got 10 targets last week, so that kind of muffs my point.
Well, he muffed a pair of them because he dropped them. So.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, but there is no doubt that the potential of this 49ers offense is almost unlimited when they have Brandon Aiyuk blowing the top off of the defense, which he did for most of last year. That's why they were so dominant during the year. And they've come back to earth a little bit. Granted, they've had injuries, but I think the main reason is because Aiyuk just has not been that threat that he was last year that earned him this big-time payday. And because of that, I know, Evan, you mentioned it earlier, I think people are nitpicking just because of the whole context. We saw the video of Kyle Shanahan asking him to change his shorts.
I
don't know who
was pretty funny.
I don't know who was the originator of the tweet that used the word he threw a tantrum. I did not see a tantrum when I watched that video. It's funny. My wife was the one who showed me the video. And before I could say anything, before I shared my opinion, she was like, it doesn't look like it's a tantrum to me. And I was going to say the same thing. It just didn't look like it. But that, to me, shows that people are frustrated with him overall. So they're overanalyzing every little thing he does. He punted his shorts. I think he was doing it in jest. I think Kyle Shanahan was like, dude, you got to change. We all got to be wearing the same color. Take off your shirts and do it. And he was probably like, come on, man. Are you serious?
Yeah.
And then he was like, yeah, I'm serious. Change your damn shorts. And he changed them. And then in jest, he punted them away. We are nitpicking things. I do not think it was that deep. But I genuinely do understand why the fan base is a bit frustrated with him, given the overall context of what has played out since the Super Bowl.
And that's the key word, is context. And look, the video was posted, I think it was on Thursday, or I don't know, it could have been Friday. Frankly, it doesn't matter because there was a video of Kyle Shanahan walking over, speaking to Brandon Aiyuk, who was wearing the wrong color shorts. They were red, they're supposed to be black. And then after a brief conversation, Brandon Aiyuk is seen and videotaped pulling his shorts down, pulling black shorts up. And then, the way that I think about it is, you come back from the gym, you walk in your house, you drop your shorts, and you kind of kick them just because you're just like, whatever. There was no tantrum about it. It might have looked childish, but to me it was much to do about nothing. And even Kyle Shanahan, I don't know how you can necessarily, and it might have been framed as ripping a guy. I don't know how you could rip a guy with a backwards cap on, also with shorts on. It just looked like the most chill conversation in the world to me. Right. And just a reminder, hey, all right, come on, buddy. Everyone and their mom out here is wearing black shorts. You can't be out of line. You got to be in the same uniform. There's uniformity. There's chemistry. There's cohesion. You got to be on the same page with your guys.
Dude, I went to a Catholic
school. Just go ahead and drop the shorts. Come on, man.
I went to a Catholic school. I know all about uniforms. You used to show up to gym class with the wrong colored shorts. You couldn't participate in gym class. I'm telling you, some people are just sticklers for that. And it doesn't matter. It's just the rules. You do it because it's the rules. It's not really your place to call the rule dumb. It's your boss. I'm sure we all have some rules that we have to abide by where we roll our eyes, but it is what it is. The person writing your paycheck is telling you what to do, so you do it. Because
comparison is so good.
It's so true.
You're going
to
liturgy and you don't have the right tie on, and they say
shirts untucked.
But
shirts untucked. You don't have on a belt. We would have to have a belt on, shirt tucked. You know how many times my friends would come to me
dress shoes
right before. Hey, do you have an extra belt in your locker?
Aren't you wearing socks?
Yeah, 100%. The details. That's probably why I dress the way I do now, because it was just drilled into you. Belt, shirt tucked in, socks matching your shoes, dress shoes, not sneakers. Although I used to wear the little black Air Force Ones that look like
you
shoes.
You can get away with those.
Yeah, it would keep them off my butt because they would just see it from afar and think they were black sneaker or shoes. So I get it, man. I get it. Now let me ask you this. This is a topic that I don't see much from the fan base or the media. I will even go along the lines where I do think he kind of gets a pass. I think Bosa needs to be playing better. I do. I don't think it's to the point of Brandon Aiyuk. I think Brandon Aiyuk's struggles have been pretty obvious and glaring. And I know the usual defense to this is, well, Bosa draws so much attention, even when you don't see the numbers reflective of how you think they should be, he is helping out the team. I get it. But all the top DNs deal with that. Everyone, you see Hutchinson, you see Hutchinson, my man in Pittsburgh.
TJ Watt.
You see Hutchinson,
Myles
you see
Garrett.
Watt, you see Myles Garrett. They all
Max Crosby.
Yeah, they all fall under that same umbrella. They're going to be double teamed. They're going to be game planned against. I think Bosa needs to be better. I genuinely do, and I do think that topic doesn't get broached as much. I don't know why, but I do think that's something that he should wreck defenses a little more than he has.
No, I agree. And, yeah, he's got a couple of sacks, but they were at points and moments in the Vikings game that were not game-altering plays. And I think that's the difference to me between Bosa and some of his peers, is that it feels like when you're watching a game and there's a big moment, the player that I swear to God frustrate the hell out of me would always do this was Von Miller.
Oh, yeah.
Von Miller, he would only have one or two big plays in every game, but they would be on the final drive. It would be a strip sack. It's the reason why he was a Super Bowl MVP.
I was about to say, he did it in the Super Bowl.
Literally did it against the Panthers.
He was quiet all game.
If you just look at his numbers, nothing's going to pop out of the box score, but that one sack was the biggest sack of the season for the Denver Broncos. Those are the kinds of plays that someone like Von Miller can make and why he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, and the kinds of plays that I don't see Nick Bosa make enough. And while he's still extremely good, you go look at the pressure rate, you go look at the number of pressures, you go look at his tackles for loss, he's up there with everyone. But if you watch the game, I'm with you, Jay, there needs to be more moment-altering plays by Nick Bosa. And I think against the Patriots, that's a team that he can absolutely take advantage of. There's a player on that side, for example, named Keon White. He's got 4 sacks right now. He's up there as far as one of the best at his position in the league. He's somebody that made enough plays during the Patriots win against Cincinnati to help them get that W. You're not going to hear about him because he's not a big name, but he's made more moment and game-altering plays this season for the New England Patriots than Nick Bosa has made for the San Francisco 49ers. And from that standpoint, I think you're right. He absolutely needs to play better because he makes more money per year. And I don't mean to count pockets, but we do it with Brandon Aiyuk all the time. Right. Nick Bosa makes $6 million more on average than the next highest paid edge rusher in football. He has not played $6 million better than the next highest paid edge rusher in football. He's not been the clear-cut number one. He might not even be a clear-cut top 3. He's been very good, but he's not been what the Niners have paid him to be, and that's what I want to see starting today.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and that's what I was going to follow up with. Look, it's kind of similar to what we just mentioned with Trent Williams, how we said Trent Williams hasn't been great, but it's a high bar. Same thing with Nick Bosa. It's a high bar. So no one is saying Nick Bosa has been bad. We know he hasn't. But when you're the highest paid edge rusher in football, you have to be extraordinary. He has not been extraordinary. The year before he got paid, essentially the year that got him paid, in my opinion, and I know other people can have it, but my opinion, he was the clear-cut best edge rusher in football. Now, there's about 3 or 4 people I will put in front of him. That's not the trend you want to see after you make someone the highest paid edge rusher in football. It's not. Now, like I said, it's a high bar. Don't get me wrong. He hasn't been playing bad per se, but Hutchinson right now might be the best edge rusher in football. You got Myles Garrett. You got Watt. You got Max Crosby. Those are guys I'm looking at right now. Like, I would take them over Nick. I just would. And Nick Bosa is damn good. We have a guy wearing a Bosa jersey right in front of us.
There's a lot of 97s
I like
here.
that gold one. I really do.
That one is nice.
But he has to be better. You're the highest paid. You're the highest paid edge rusher in football, and you just have to be better. We do it with other players all the time. Like we said, we do it with Aiyuk. We hold Brock Purdy to this crazy standard. And, I mean, we do it all the time in basketball.
Yeah,
all the time. Look at Wiggins getting paid this, and this guy's getting paid that. Look, man, both of you are getting paid a pretty penny. It's not pocket watching. It's just the nature of the game you play. Your salary goes against the cap. You get judged and compared to people at your position and what they get paid. I mean, look. When it's Aiden Hutchinson's time to get paid, which probably in like a year from now, I think he's in his second year, they're going to point to your salary, and he's going to be like, look what I have done versus what he has done since I've been in the league. And the Lions are going to be like, objectively, it looks like you've been better.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. You expect a little more, and he has it in him because we've seen him. Like that year that got him paid, there was a legit case where you knew it would never happen because it was his position.
MVP,
but MVP, this is one of the best players in football, regardless of position. And I don't know. It's just it's a high bar, as I keep saying, but I think it's a fair one. I think it's a fair bar.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Nick Bosa, now a lower end, but at the time that he was paid like a quarterback. I mean, we kill quarterbacks all the time for not doing this or not doing that or not winning games or not being a leader. We nitpick every single thing about a quarterback down to what hat they wear at the podium. And Nick Bosa was paid like one of those players, and deservedly so. This is not to say a player should not be making the kind of money that they make, because, quite frankly, they're taking advantage of their entire rookie contract that they play at the kind of level that Nick Bosa does. So he deserved to be paid. What we're asking for is maintaining that level or staying close to that level. And for whatever reason, he has not been at that level since he got paid. I understand last year the contract negotiation impacted preseason, impacted training camp. Okay, that's fine. Still had 10.5 sacks, was a Pro Bowler, a very good player. But this year, with a full offseason, he was in training camp. He was a part of OTAs. He was a part of minicamps. He involved himself in all player-related activities. All right, now I need to see where that work can come to the field and you can step on the gridiron and dominate the way that we know that you can. All right, let's take one final break. Be back before we get you up until kickoff, 1 o'clock, 1:05 Niners and Patriots right outside of Levi's Stadium. That's where we are right now. We are inside and right outside the tailgate at the Hilton Santa Clara. This is the Kickoff Show brought to you by Habas Law. If you have been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURE or visit habaslaw.com. On the other side, we'll give you our keys to the game, a little bit more X's and O's talk between the Niners and the Patriots, and, of course, final predictions, not just for the 49ers. We also go around the league a little bit, talk about who we like, some surprises, some disappointments, some no-shows, don't-you-knows, all that coming up and more right here on the Kickoff Show. Evan Giddings alongside Jason Dumas in for Lorenzo Neal, live at the Hilton Santa Clara, brought to you by Habas Law. We're back with our final segment on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
All right, one final segment here live at the Hilton Santa Clara, the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. Jason Dumas in for Lorenzo Neal alongside Evan Giddings with you as always. Almost time between the 49ers and the Patriots. Week 4, the Niners 10-point favorites. I think it opened at 10.5, Jay. They are by far the team that is expected the most this week to win. We've already seen a couple of lopsided games going, including some of your boys out there back in Tampa Bay. But this is the game that I think, while not the country will be watching, I think the country as a whole is expecting the Niners to get back to where they need to be. I'm not necessarily a betting man, and a 10-point spread would really, I don't know, just kind of, it would scare me a little bit. There's always the room for the backdoor cover, but I do feel like the Niners, this is a game that they are going to dominate, that they are going to handle, and quite frankly, that they're going to take personally because of what happened last week in a game that they should have won.
Yeah, like, you don't expect Jacoby Brissett to drive up and down the field on this defense. He shouldn't. No disrespect to Jacoby. He's a journeyman quarterback who's been mostly a career backup, though, for a reason. Mm-hmm. And frankly, the offense doesn't have many playmakers at all. And they're without Kendrick Bourne, former 49er. So they really have no reason to keep up with this 49ers offense, who is getting back George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. And then if you just look at context, coming off of the way the 49ers lost to the Rams, like the manner in which they lost, you would imagine that they are going to be extra motivated to get in the win column. First home game since week 1. 1 o'clock game. It's sunny out. We see hordes of people walking into the stadium right now. Like you said, it's not a must-win. It's still September, but it's one of those you better win. And Vegas was built because they're usually right. And although the top outright favorite has lost 3 weeks in a row now in the NFL.
Yeah, week 1 it was the Bengals against the Patriots. Week 2... I think there was a couple of close spreads in week 2, but week 3 was the Raiders losing to the Panthers.
Was it the Ravens week 2? The Ravens lost.
Oh, yeah, the Raiders-Ravens. That's right.
Yeah.
Raiders-Ravens.
That lost me and my survivors.
Isn't it wild? Like,
yeah.
I'm already out, too, because I was on Cleveland last week at home against the Giants. But after 3 weeks, I think there might be 2 people left in my survivor pool.
Same.
It's hell out there.
I was in the Warriors world pool, so obviously anybody who listens to this show is familiar with Warriors world. Mm-hmm. You know, huge company, Golden State Warriors content page, and it was like 60 people. And by the time I was out in week 2, it was down to like 16. It was just brutal. So. Yeah, but, Vegas knows, and Niners are 10-point favorites for a reason. They have no business losing this game. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, it's easier said than done with him because he's always trying to be so innovative. But just keep it simple. Jordan Mason's having a great year, Talented player. Pound the ball, play through him, open up your offense, get George Kittle involved, boom, your win. But mainly, I want to see the defense make a statement. This is the week to do it. You're not playing a talented offense by any means. Get stops early, force 3 and outs, get some sacks, rattle Jacoby, have a game that gets people believing in that unit again. We know Fred Warner's going to bring it. He's having like an all-everything season. But outside of him, he's probably been the only guy who has played beyond his expectations on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
So I would like to see the defense make a statement today. That's what I think is most important. The offense is going to be the offense. They'll score points all year long. They'll get it right. Is that defense really that I think has set the Niners apart over the last couple of years that made them Super Bowl contenders?
Yeah, that's what's made them whole. That's what's made them a team that has been very good in all 3 phases. But in my opinion, 2 of the 3 phases have not held up their end of the bargain.
Yeah, special teams, I didn't even mention it.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, and Jake Moody's only missed 1 kick this year. It just so happened to be the kick that would have sealed the game against the Rams. But I'm talking about punt blocks. I'm talking about fake punts, not being ready on special teams for specific situations that have hurt the 49ers in a few of their last 2 losses. So, look, they're going to be a bit more whole offensively. Deebo Samuel's active today. Trent Williams, who also he went through his pregame warm-ups, decided to test that calf, which he cramped up a bit last week in Los Angeles for. He is active in this game. George Kittle is going to be active. So, offensively, I'm with you, Jay. I'm not necessarily worried about them, and I think they've actually played at a high enough level to win, especially last week, but even maybe against Minnesota, you can make the case too. I think where they need to regress to the mean in a positive fashion is on defense, and specifically against the run. This is a Niners defense that has not been able to stop people on the ground for what feels like going back all the way. You mentioned the Baltimore game on Christmas Day. Since that game, it doesn't feel like they've been able to stop anybody on the ground so far this season. They're 21st in yards per carry. They're 29th in EPA against the run. And I think more importantly, this isn't just against the run as a whole, but defensively, they're 3rd worst in football on 3rd down. They have not been able to get off the field when they need to, and that is where I don't know if it's a schematic issue. I don't know if it's because of a brand new defensive coordinator. I don't know if it's because players just simply haven't played up to their level of talent, a la Nick Bosa. But what I do believe is against a Patriots group that, like you're saying, is not that complicated. They're going to put the ball in the hands of Ramondre Stevenson, try and make a couple of plays. Jalen Polk's a talented rookie wide receiver for them, but Jacoby Brissett is not going to be airing the ball out the way that that Matthew Stafford was, the way that Sam Darnold was, the way that even Aaron Rodgers was. Keep this thing simple defensively, stop the run, regress to the mean positively, and I don't think that there's a way the Niners can lose this game if their defense plays at that level.
Yeah, 100%. It's just this is the perfect get-right game. It's just the Patriots just aren't very good. I do like the way they've been playing, and I think they found something in Gerard Mayo. He seems like a good coach. I think Patriots fans have reason to be optimistic with a rookie quarterback waiting in the wing who probably won't play till, week 10 this year, week 11. They'll probably throw him in then and just let him get the last 4 or 5 games of the season and then get him into the offseason. That's usually how they do it with the rookie quarterbacks who don't play early, especially on a bad team. So, But outside of that, man, then, you mentioned the special teams. Like, they just have to be more steady. Like, even week 2 when they got that punt blocked and it just looked like Mitch could have just hopped on the ball, but he kind of just stood there and watched it, and, the Vikings pick it up and run into the red zone. They just have to be tight. And even with the defense, like, even if the defense isn't like this stout top 5 unit, they have to be better on 3rd down, and they have to be better in the red zone. A mediocre defense can get by if they're good on 3rd down and they're good in the red zone. The bend don't break. You force teams to 3 points instead of 7 points. You get a team off the field on 3rd and long. You don't have to be the 85 Bears if you're just slightly above average on 3rd down and red zone. But if you're a bad red zone defense and a bad 3rd down defense, very seldom see those type of teams win meaningful games late in the season. So the Niners need to get right on 3rd down. They need to get right in the red zone. And then the offense can probably carry them from there. But as you said at the top of the show, this game is like, you better have it. I mean, because, after this is the Cardinals, correct?
Yeah, and Arizona is going to be a tough game next
Arizona,
week.
Arizona, I've been out here for 6 years. It seems like all 6 years I've been here, Arizona plays the 49ers tough. It doesn't matter.
Even when they're bad.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Colt McCoy. It doesn't matter if it's Kyler Murray. It doesn't matter. It's just something about that matchup. It's the same way with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. My entire life. Doesn't matter what the Commanders' record. When Kirk Cousins played for them, he looked like John Elway. It doesn't matter.
Dwayne Haskins tore y'all up?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're going to split with the Eagles every single year.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels the same way with the Cards. So, obviously, and Kyler Murray's playing pretty well this year.
He's playing extremely good football, and mobile quarterbacks have always given the Niners fits. And so, that's why, again, I think even more than it is just about winning and, getting back to 500 and kind of stabilizing things. To me, this is a game where the Niners psychologically need to impress because you are playing a bit, in my opinion, with two scoreboards. It's not just can you beat them on the scoreboard, but how do you look doing it? Because the Niners have not looked like themselves so far, and I do think a big reason is because of the defense. And by the way, there is an update. So Talanoa Hufanga inactive for this game. It looks like it's going to be the rookie Malik Mustafa who is going to step in and play safety for Talanoa Hufanga. He had a couple of big gaffes in the loss to the Rams. Had a missed tackle on a Kyron Williams touchdown. He was the gunner that missed on the final punt return to get the ball back to the 50. He had a chance to make a tackle on that play and could not do it. So I'm also looking at some of the younger guys, how they step up. And the Niners in general, I just think a stabilizing performance is one that I feel like is important for them and of course important for the fans. But at the end of the day, the Niners season is not even close to being over. But we're looking at kind of these quarters, right? I guess technically you can't go quarters because it's 17 games instead of 16.
Yeah, you get the point.
But this is the end of the first phase of the season.
The preseason, what I've been calling it.
Of the pre-regular season. And the first quarter of the pre-regular season on top and build some momentum as you move into the more tougher part of your schedule. Then you have Arizona. Then you look after that. You're moving into the Kansas Cities, the Dallases, the Seattles. Those are games in which you're going to have to be playing your best football.
Yeah.
So let's just start that right now today against New England.
Yeah, no, you said it. They say style points don't matter in football, and more or less that is a statement that is correct. But I feel you. Today is you want to see them win a certain way because of who they're playing. I get it. New England plays hard. They're a professional team, too. All of these guys are pros, so anything can happen. I get it. But at the end of the day, the Niners are a much better team. You would like to see a team just do exactly what they're supposed to, beat the crap out of a team that they're just much better than. And I'm sure that would have a lot of people feeling really well sitting in traffic leaving this game. If it's a slugfest and they win on a field goal or they win by 6 points and Brock Purdy was picked off twice and the Patriots have two 60-yard runs or an 80-yard bomb and the defense just looks like it has a lot of holes in it, even if they win, it's going to be one of those feelings all week long. The Niners are not ready. And you don't want that. I don't want that because we gotta work through that. And you want to see them win the way that they're capable of, and I think they will. There's no avenue to me seeing the Patriots getting this win on the road with Jacoby Brissett. There's not a chance.
I think, look, the one path to victory for the Patriots, to me, is running the football, and that's why those numbers I mentioned about the defensive line are a bit concerning. And Ramondre Stevenson has been a player that's faced, I think, the 7th highest stacked boxes in football. So, he's accustomed to seeing a lot of pressure and basically just trying to take the run away from him. The Jets did it last week on Thursday night in a 24-3 victory for New York. They got beat up a little bit in week 2, though they took Seattle to overtime at home. This is a resilient Patriots team, but not a very talented one. Maybe also the extra rest is a factor. We're not weighing enough in this football game, but again, it shouldn't be an excuse for the 49ers. So I also want to, while we have a few minutes left here,
they were that Thursday night game, weren't
exactly,
they? Yeah,
Thursday night
I
game.
didn't even think of that. Yeah, they've had a couple extra days.
But I do want to go through a couple of things, just kind of some quick hitters as far as questions and predictions for this game as we get set, and then we'll finish with our final prediction for the Niners and the Patriots Week 4 at Levi's. All right, this one I actually found kind of interesting. So Brock Purdy last week was dominant, statistically speaking. 2 touchdowns, 292 through the air, had a 131 quarterback rating. This week against the Patriots, Jason, will you go over or under a 100 quarterback rating for Brock Purdy?
Over. I think Kyle Shanahan tailors this offense pretty well for his skill set. He never seems like Brock has to throw too many very low percentage balls. Kyle does a great job of scheming people open. Brock is accurate in general. So the high level of difficulty passes, for me at least, seem like they come few and far between. So he's going to keep that completion percentage up. As long as you keep that completion percentage up and you don't turn the ball over, that QB rating is usually up.
I actually lean under in this game, not because I think Brock Purdy is going to be bad, but because I think they're going to be simplistic offensively. I think it's going to be a big Jordan Mason game, and I don't think that Brock Purdy is going to necessarily have to throw for 3 touchdowns. Even if he does throw a pick in this game, I don't think it's going to be one that will kill the 49ers. So you take the over on the 100 quarterback rating, I'll take the under. Our next question is, who will have the most yards from scrimmage between rushing and receiving? Who do you think is going to be the skill position player today for the 49ers that has the most scrimmage yards?
I will say Jordan Mason. Kind of just leading back to your point, I think they're going to lean on him. He's been one of the best running backs in football this year. That speaks a lot to Jordan Mason. That speaks a lot to how this 49ers offensive line has been in the run game. And I think, they'll feed the beast. And it's always hard when it comes to skill players at the pass catchers with the Niners because they have so many weapons. You just never know which one is going to have his day. Yeah. But it's going to be Jordan Mason getting the touches out of the backfield. So I'm going to go Jordan Mason.
I do think it's going to be Brandon Aiyuk. And one of the reasons, I mentioned Mason, but also I think having Deebo Samuel back in this game, I wonder how much Kyle Shanahan will use him as a running back, but he's kind of the de facto RB2, so they might split carries, and Jordan Mason might not be getting the 20 to 30 touches that we saw like he did week 1 on Monday night. I just think this is a game where Brandon Aiyuk, for his own confidence, for the Niners' confidence in him, he needs to have a big game. And is that going to look like $150? Probably not. But I think it could look like 7 for 90 and a touchdown. And that, to me, is going to be good enough overall as the Niners kind of distribute things offensively to put him at number 1 for me. So I think it's going to be a Brandon Aiyuk game. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Let's talk about who is going to make, let's call them, big plays. So either a turnover play, an interception, tackle for loss, a sack. Who do you think is going to be making the biggest plays for the 49ers against the Patriots?
I got to go Fred Warner. He's been their defensive MVP, maybe been their MVP of the season so far through 3 games.
That's a good call.
He's just otherworldly. He's the best linebacker in football, first team All-Pro type player, and it'll continue. It'll continue this week.
I am with you on this. I think Fred has been probably the best defensive player based on how the rest of his team has played compared to how he has. I mean, he's looked like one of those quarterbacks that done it all himself. If Josh Allen is a guy that's lost all of his weapons for the Buffalo Bills and he's led his team to a 3-0 start, Fred Warner's been the equivalent of that for the Niners. And I know the record is not nearly the same, but Fred Warner can't score touchdowns. Fred Warner can't run the football. What he can do is make game-altering plays, and he was the only reason that they're in that game against the Vikings, in my opinion. Making big plays is what Fred Warner has done, so I'm 100%.
He literally almost willed them to win as a middle linebacker.
He was the only reason I thought they had a chance to be in that football game. They should have been dominated and out of that game, but because of Fred that they were in it. All right, well, 5 minutes left here. Predictions for the game. Score. I don't know if there's anything else you want to throw in there as far as a prop or maybe something you're looking to see here, but what do you think happens today between the 49ers and the Patriots?
I think the score is going to be a 27-13 type game. And even though it's 27-13, I think it's like one of those games that even that score doesn't indicate how much the 49ers could have won by. Niners might, take the foot off the gas a little bit in the fourth quarter. Maybe take some guys out like Deebo, since Deebo and Kittle, who might not necessarily need to be playing in the fourth quarter of a game, in a game where they weren't even sure they were going to play midweek. So it'll be like that, and I think it'll be a heavy dose of Jordan Mason. I also think Brock Purdy will continue to be cool, calm, collected, and just lead this offense in a positive way. And I think the defense will have a get-right game. I think this is the perfect team to be on the schedule after you lose a game in the fashion you did against the Los Angeles Rams.
I like that. I'm also taking the 49ers. I'll give the Patriots some more points. I think the Niners getting Deebo back, getting Kittle back, I think they return to the Purdy for 30 club. I think they crack 30 points. I'll say Niners 30, Patriots 14. This kind of, well, maybe 17. I'll give him a field goal. But 30-17, I think they cover the 10-point spread. I think this is a game that is not where one person in particular stands out, but it's just a solid all-around bounce-back performance. I also think that there's going to be 2 turnovers in this game by the 49ers defense. I don't know if it's a forced fumble. I don't know if it's an interception, a potential strip. But I do think that they turn the ball over twice against a Patriots team that has not been, even though I think people find the Patriots to be synonymous with, not beating themselves, they have beaten themselves over the first 3 weeks of this season. And the only time that they have played a quality 60-minute football game was when the Bengals also beat themselves in week 1. So if the Niners take care of business, do not shoot themselves in the foot, I think they turn the ball over a couple times, and I think they walk away with a 13-point victory. So we're going to be talking on Monday, is that good enough? How did it look as opposed to what the score was? So, Jason, big thank you for hopping on with us today. Always fun to chop it up with you.
Of course.
And, ball, man. We're just talking about before the show, the games that we're watching. How does that impact the Niners, the NFC, what's going on there? So it's been a fun show, man.
Yeah, the NFC is wide open right now, even though the Niners are a couple games back in the standings. Minnesota looked great through 4 weeks, but I'm not sure how much longevity that team has. I'm not saying they won't make the postseason or anything, but I'm not scared they're going to run away with this conference and be the overwhelming favorites when it's all said and done. And the same thing can be said about the Tampa Bay Bucks, even though I do think the Bucks' style of play is a little more conducive with playoff football. They protect the ball, and their defense is good, and Todd Bowles is a great coach. So I do think the Bucks actually might be the scariest team to me in the NFC right now, just because if they get into playoffs and they can just play that smash mouth brand of football that they play, that's a style that wins in the postseason. But outside of that, this year is still young. I still think it's the preseason for the 49ers. And once all things get clicking on all cylinders, the Niners will kind of reestablish, I should say, themselves as the favorites in the NFC.
Well, and make sure to return to 95.7 the game after the final whistle, because breaking down everything from the Niners and Patriots is going to be Mark Grandy along with Sterling Bennett and Kyle Madsen on Overtime. Again, right here, keep it locked on 95.7 the game after Week 4 concludes. But for everyone here, for everybody that stopped by the tailgate right outside of the Hilton Santa Clara for the Habas Law Kickoff Show, big thank you to everyone that has contributed to the show. Big thank you to Tim Jordan here live on site. Big thank you to Jason Dumas, my co-host here today, and also to Lorenzo Neal, who's down south getting a lot of love for a much hopefully deserved Hall of Fame trajectory as he tries to get his gold jacket that is duly deserved. So he'll be back next week. For Evan Giddings saying thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. Overtime after the Niners and the Patriots, Grandy, Bennett, Madsen, and this has been a fantastic time down at Levi's Stadium. We'll do it again next week. And a big thank you to all those of you listening right here on 95.7 The Game.